Welcome back to another episode of After the Whistle, everybody. It is Wednesday, October 23rd, coming in to week 9 of the college football season. And you know what day it is? It's Thursday. It's a prediction show. Before we get into the predictions, though, there's a couple things that I feel like I have to talk about. There's a couple things that need to be brought up, need to be mentioned. And it's kind of in relation to some of just the fact that I think we're headed towards the biggest coaching carousel, just absolute chaotic offseason that we've ever seen. I think there's a lot of jobs that are going to be open, and there's already, a lot of jobs open now. But I think before season's end, we're going to see a lot more job openings just start to pop up. And unfortunate because people are losing their jobs, but hey, when you get paid $50 million to, quote, lose your job, I'd say you can, they wipe their tears with Benjamins on that one. And also, we got to think about it this way too. I also have to factor in the fact that there is a competitive aspect to this as well. So when people say, oh, well, Billy Napier got fired in his buyouts, whatever, $50 million or whatever. And people say, well, he's $50 million richer. I bet he's happy. Well, the thing about it is here's the deal. These coaches, the energy that these coaches have, they're so competitive. I'm sure, the money's good, the buyout checks or whatever. But come on, you really can't think that makes him happy. It's not like he's, you think about pouring your heart and soul into a place for the last few years, trying to make it better, trying to establish a winning culture. It just doesn't work out, but you're essentially told, hey, you failed. That's got to sting for a competitor. And Billy Napier is a competitor, make no mistake about it. But, that's got to sting for people like James Franklin, people like Billy Napier, and then other coaches that are going to get fired by the end of this year. It's got to sting for them because they are, lots of men are competitive. When you have that energy, I would imagine that, the last thing that they're thinking about is the buyout money that they're going to get from it. But, as I said, I think we're headed towards one of the most wild off seasons that we have seen in a while as it pertains to the coaching carousel. We currently have a few positions that have already been vacated. We have the, Arkansas Razorbacks, the Colorado State Rams, the Florida Gators, Oklahoma State Cowboys, Oregon State Beavers, Penn State Nittany Lions, Stanford Cardinal, Virginia Tech Hokies, UAB. We have UCLA. We also have Kent State. If you care about that kind of thing, Kent State, Nick Saban's alma mater. Little nugget of information there for you if you didn't know it already. But that's the current, openings across the landscape that we're seeing so far. The exits of the likes of guys like Sam Pittman, Jay Norvell, Colorado State. We've definitely a coach that didn't quite pan out, but a lot of people have a lot of respect for. Ultimately didn't work out there for him. And then obviously the hot button, coaches that people have been talking about here over the last few weeks, James Franklin, Billy Napier, the big time jobs, also Deshaun Foster at UCLA getting ousted as well. Now that leads me to what I would like to consider potential openings. And I have 4 here. And I have 4 coaches that I feel like are, their seats are lukewarm, maybe even warm, maybe on the side of a little bit more hot. And I'm going to give a temperature based on a scale of 1 to 10, how hot I think these guys' seats are in college football. But like I said, there's probably more out there. But we're still going to just going to pick a few here as well. Let's see. First off, all right, Florida State fans, let's talk about it. Y'all have had a rough few weeks after the, opening the season to beat Alabama. Expectations are high. The whole fan base is on a high. Everybody's like, we can hang with anybody. Florida State's really good. Then the next 2 weeks they rattle off like 140 points in the next 2 games. Everybody thinks this is a team that can really go all the way, compete for a college football playoff national championship, go to the playoff, ACC champion. Expectations had never been higher in Tallahassee since 2013. Or not 2013, excuse me. Since a few years ago, 2023, when they had ultimately had the playoff snub there with the team that went 12-0, 13-0, won the ACC championship and finished 13-1. But Norvell just hasn't worked out. And in talking, and I know quite a bit of Florida State fans, and in talking to them, there's no more faith in this coach. There's no more faith in this staff. And I feel like this all kind of stems back to some issues that we can point back to that I spoke about on this podcast before last season, I believe it was. And y'all, let me go ahead and tell you, I got dragged by Florida State fans online. Social media, people that I knew, I got dragged by Florida State fans for saying this. But it's a testament to a team's culture. The year before, 2023, into that year, you go 12-0 in the regular season. You win the ACC championship. You 13-0. You go to the playoff, or not go to the playoff. You get snubbed. You don't go to the playoff. You end up playing Georgia. Like 80% of your team just throws their suckers in the dirt, doesn't want to participate, refuses to participate. I criticized that, and I got drugged for it. Because I said, this is a perfect example of a team that has a coach that doesn't have a legitimate winning culture established. And I said, this is a culture. You have a culture problem in Tallahassee. Florida State fans, oh, no, we don't. No, we don't. We got plenty of culture. We went 12-0. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a culture. Okay? You got your coach bet it all on Black in the portal. He hit, and you got a really good team. But then you've seen the results of betting it all on Black in the portal more times than not with Mike Norvell, because he's only got one winning season since he's been in Tallahassee. And he bets it all on Black on the portal every year. And the gripe that I have with that is the good coaches, the best coaches in college football, when you talk about guys like Kirby Smart, when you talk about guys like Ryan Day, when you talk about guys like Marcus Freeman, name whoever you want, the coaches at the top, and they do not rebuild their roster every year with the transfer portal. They don't. And this is what this staff at Florida State, the coach Mike Norvell, has been doing since he's been in Tallahassee. And you can, yes, the best coaches, what they do, they still recruit out of the high school ranks. They bring in a good base of players out of those ranks, out of the high school ranks. And then what they do is they bolster their roster via, they add depth, or they maybe are a little bit shorthanded in the wide receiver department. They go get a receiver out of the portal. They're a little bit shorthanded on the offensive line. They go get an offensive lineman out of the portal. That's what you see a lot of the great coaches do. Kirby does it, this year with the additions of the guys like Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas. Georgia, one of the weak spots of their team last year was at the receiver position. Georgia was going to be shorthanded this year at that position. He goes out. What's he do? He gets receivers. And the problem with Norvell is it's all portal built. You can't expect to establish a culture with a portal built team. You just can't. You're pulling players from all over the country, from different regions, from different schools. Some of them may have played in the Big Ten. Some may have played in the Big 12. Some may have played in the Pac-2. Some may have played in the Conference USA, whatever. And you're bringing these players in, and you're basically betting on the fact that they are going to gel as a unit, and they are going to play good together as a team. And I think we have seen the experiment in Tallahassee has failed more times than not. And I think given the situation this year that Florida State's in, expectations were high. Last year was a bad year. Norvell revamped the staff with the hiring of guys like Gus Malzahn, revamps this staff, and it's almost like Florida State University said, we're going to give you one more chance at this, and he overhauls the staff, and the same problems are rearing their ugly head in Tallahassee. And the reason is because the head coach is the problem in Tallahassee. I don't have an issue with Mike Norvell. I don't have any kind of problem with him whatsoever. I just don't think the situation in Tallahassee is a good fit for him. I think Florida State needs to move on sooner rather than later. I heard some rumblings this week that he was going to be let go on Monday. That did not happen. I had a friend of mine text me on Sunday night that said, hey, I know you're probably going to record this evening. Don't put this on your podcast tonight because I don't know for sure yet, but Norvell could be getting let go as soon as tomorrow. Going into the bye week, just like what Florida did. Let Billy Napier go going into the bye week. Thought Florida State might do the same. Didn't end up happening. But I still feel like the hot seat meter on Mike Norvell, we're going to give it a level 9. It is piping hot. Singeing the underbritches is how hot the seat is for Mike Norvell. And feel like the Florida State and people, I see people on message boards, and don't get me wrong, most Florida State fans that I talk with are fed up with Norvell, but there are those select few that I have no idea what to call them. There's some things I can think to call them. It's not exactly podcast appropriate because I do have family members and I do have people that listen to this podcast that would really criticize me if I said what I want to say about some of these people. But there are some people that say, oh, it's not all Norvell's fault. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. Well, let me go ahead and break this down to you. And I'm not even a Florida State fan, but there is no excuse like absolutely none. No excuse for Florida State to go 2-10 ever. Ever. There's no excuse for Florida State to lose to Memphis. There's no excuse for Florida State to lose to Stanford. There's no excuse for Florida State to have a losing record consistently. There's no excuse. I understand some teams, teams have a bad year every now and then. They have a down year. They win 5, 6, 7 games, whatever. I understand that. But it's Florida State. I mean, a very historic, very prideful program over the years when you talk about guys like Bobby Bowden and you talk about Chris Winkie, you talk about Jameis Winston, you talk about Kelvin Benjamin, Dalvin Cook, you talk about the players that have played and worn that garnet and gold. And you see the product on the field now. It should embarrass you as a Florida State fan that you have to watch that. I feel bad for y'all. Like, I feel for you, really. Like, I really and truly feel for that fan base because it's a very passionate fan base. Y'all deserve better. Mike Norvell needs to go. And the athletic director for Florida State, piss off, dude. Like, this guy's ruining your program. You've got to cut the cancer out. You've got to get rid of him. Like, done. He needs to go. But release a statement saying we're committed to Mike Norvell through the rest of this football season, and we'll analyze where our football program is at the end of this year. Come on, dude. Like, just grow some. Just do the right thing for Florida State because Florida State fans, I hear you, and I talk to y'all all the time, and I hear your concerns, and I'm trying to go to bat for you here. So Mike Norvell got to go on that. We agree. Next guy that we'd like to talk about on this one as well. Next guy that I feel like is on the hot seat, and a lot of it rides on what happens this weekend, and that is Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And you can say what you want about Auburn has been screwed by refs this year. Or, this is still not a very good team, guys. Let's not kid ourselves. Like, great defense. Now, you will find no rebuttal from me at all when you talk about Auburn's defense. Great defense. The same problems that have been occurring since Hugh Freeze has been on the Plains in Auburn are still there. No offense. Subpar quarterback play. Just absolutely wasting talent at the receiver position. Cam Coleman deserves better. Horatio Fields deserves better. Jeremiah Cobb deserves better. I mean, this is an offense that can't get out of their own way, regardless of what you want to say. And to me, the ref argument is a loser's mentality. It's a loser excuse. And when you're a losing football program, you're going to make loser excuses. And when your coach is a loser, he's going to make loser excuses. And this is where we're at now with Auburn football. A prideful program as well, a school that absolutely went as far during the offseason to tell us that they have 9 national championships now instead of just what they had, 2. I mean, they got 9. They just somehow reached in the bag of tricks and found 7 national championships and just propped them up. Was that validation or was it legitimacy? Was it them trying to just validate that they are what they think to be a top-tier program in college football when they're really not? It's a mid program that's had a couple good years? Or is it just a program that's really good that has a mid head coach? I think it's more of the latter. I think Auburn's a great program. I think if the Auburn job becomes available, it immediately shoots to almost the top of my list. Yes, over Penn State and over Florida. I would probably put Penn State over Auburn, though, if I had to walk that back for a second, if y'all indulge me. I would probably put the Penn State job over Auburn, but I'd probably put the Auburn job over the Florida job. Just because of the state of the program and the state of, one, the athletes they have in-house. Yeah, I understand Florida's a hotbed for recruiting talent, but that fan base, man, I'm telling you, y'all, it's like y'all eat each other. Y'all, you eat your own faster than you'll eat anybody else in Gainesville. So, but back on the Auburn train here, Hugh Freeze, man, it's been a disaster. You know, it's like, I think it was a very desperation hire for Auburn when they hired Hugh Freeze. But now you're in year 3. You don't see improvements whatsoever. The same issues in year 1 are still occurring in year 3. Hugh Freeze has got to go. And for that, I've got his hot seat meter at 8, pending what happens this weekend. Because I'm telling you, if they go into Fayetteville and they lose to Arkansas this weekend, we're talking Hugh Freeze could be fired after the weekend. I'm not saying I'm hearing that. I'm saying it could be a very real possibility. Because you only get so many excuses and you only get so many chances to try to, prop your team up and say, well, we got screwed. We got the short end of the stick on this one. We got the shaft. I've seen it on message boards over the last couple weeks, and it's like, no, I mean, it's like, oh, we got shafted on that goal line play against Georgia. That should have been a touchdown. No, it shouldn't have, but darn those refs for not scoring a single point in the second half. Your coach threw his sucker in the dirt, and your coach and your team quit. Players mirror their coach's personality and mentality. You see it all the time. Perfect example of that. Look at Georgia. Look at how that team handles themselves in diverse situations or in adversity. They handle it just like their coach. They put their head down. They go to work. They don't pout. They don't do the whole woe is me thing. But that's what Hugh Freeze does. And we act shocked that the players just mail it in. That Georgia game, you watched a team quit. They mailed it in. To me, if I'm an Auburn fan and I look at this at face value and I look at it, I'm thinking to myself, do I want that kind of attitude in the building? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, these are kids. These 18 to 22, 23-year-olds. In the case of that one tight end, what's he, 25, 26? I mean, but regardless, most of these kids are 18 to 22-year-olds. Do I want that kind of influence in my building where I've got a coach that if a few calls don't go his way in a one-score game, which at the time it was more than a one-score game, you're going to quit? I just have to ask myself, if I'm Auburn, if I really want that influence around my players and my athletes, and I really ask myself if that's the kind of coach I want in my building, and therefore I think Hugh Freeze has got to go too. Another kind of one that's sticking out to me a little bit, and this rides on a lot of what happens over the next few weeks, and I'm going to put this one. Let's go Brian Kelly at LSU. And I know some of y'all is probably shocked by that. I don't know. If you don't watch college ball or you don't pay that much attention to it, you probably are shocked by that. If you watch a lot, you probably aren't. But I'm going to put Brian Kelly's hot seat meter at a 5. And it's kind of a 50-50 because the jury's out. LSU still has a lot to play for. Don't get me wrong. You know, you've got 2 losses. Yes, no margin for error. Backs against the wall. But you can still potentially, and before y'all come at me and say I said that LSU's going to beat A&M and Alabama and all that, LSU could still potentially win out. Everything is still in front of LSU. So I really wouldn't be too concerned right now with it. But the issue with Brian Kelly is this. The issue with Brian Kelly is the fact that I think over the last few years since he's been in Baton Rouge, he just refused to appropriate, I guess is the right terminology there, appropriate himself with Louisiana culture, maybe adapt to the culture, get to know the people, understand the people. Instead, it's kind of like that posturing type thing. You know, it's kind of like that same crap politicians do and they try to appeal to their base or whatever, where it's like, you know, Brian Kelly was hired and he stands up in front of the people, grabs a microphone, and he fakes a Southern accent. Like, that's Brian Kelly. He's fake. And the thing about it is, Southern folk, like people in Louisiana, Southern folk, see right through that, man. And so Brian Kelly just never was a good fit to me. It's like square peg, round hole type thing, you know, or vice versa. For me, Brian Kelly to LSU never made a whole lot of sense. And now we see, you know, we saw It's a Great Day, and we saw Me and My Family. You know, we saw all that. Now we're seeing a product on the field, you know, because people will ignore a lot as it pertains to wins. People will ignore a lot. I'll ignore some shenanigans. You can fake a Southern accent all you want, you win a national championship. But the moment you don't do that, the moment that it doesn't happen, I mean, it's a problem. For LSU fans especially, it's a problem. Very passionate fan base, you know, and they want to win. Like every other fan base, they want to win. And when they don't win, they get restless. And LSU fans are very restless right now with Brian Kelly. But, you know, I kind of put his hot seat meter on a level 5 because there's still a lot of season left. You know, you still have a lot of time left. You still have a lot of stuff to go. And, you know, to me, it's 50-50. It all rides on how the rest of the season plays out. But when I look at LSU's schedule, it really doesn't get easier. It really doesn't get easier from here. I mean, you've got Texas A&M coming to town this Saturday. We'll pick that one here in just a few minutes. But you got Texas A&M coming to town. Texas A&M 7-0. This is kind of a validation game for them, but LSU's got that. Then they have Arkansas coming to town on a noon kick, which Arkansas is kind of a weird team to play right now. We saw that last week with A&M. They gave A&M all they wanted. Then you kind of get a little bit of, I skipped one. You have Alabama on October 8th. So you get the bye week after A&M. Then you got Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Then you have Arkansas in Baton Rouge. You have Western Kentucky in Baton Rouge. And then you finish the season in Norman, Oklahoma. So the road isn't easy for LSU here. But like I said, their goals and their aspirations are all still in front of them. They can still get to the college football playoff. It's just win out. It is backs against the wall, desperation time in Baton Rouge, and we'll talk about that game coming up this weekend here in just a minute. My next coach, so I've got another coach. One more coach that I'd like to mention on the hot seat meter is Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, a once coveted, position there as the head coach in Wisconsin. And Luke Fickell, and don't get me wrong, I like Luke Fickell. I think he's a great coach. I thought it was a great hire when Wisconsin hired Luke Fickell away from Cincinnati. I thought, man, couldn't have done better. But he completely came in and changed the culture of Wisconsin football. And Wisconsin fans, if you're listening to this, your culture used to be fat guys and running backs. That was what it was. Fat guys up front, big guys and running backs. We are going to run the ball down your throat. We are Wisconsin. Bunch of corn-fed linemen just moving people out of the way, and a big running back like a Melvin Gordon just downhill, just popping people at the second level. That was Wisconsin football. And Luke Fickell comes in, obviously more of a West Coast-ish style. No, he's not a pro-style guy. So he's going to come in, he's going to try to change some things, and then now we're seeing it's not working. And it hasn't been working. You would think that in year 3, it'd be enough time to establish some kind of a rhythm, a culture. You'd see some improvement, I guess, is the best way to put that. In 3 years, we would expect to see a climb, up the rungs of the ladder, so to speak. You'd think he'd be about halfway up the ladder by now. Not quite to the top, but halfway up it. But he hasn't even taken the first step on the bottom rung. And in 3 years, with the money invested, that's a problem. So that's why I have Luke Fickell on my hot seat meter at a level 7.5. I feel like Luke Fickell, I don't see a whole lot on this schedule. When we talk about Wisconsin, you don't see a lot on the schedule that translates to wins going forward for this team. They just got smoked by Ohio State. 34-0, completely goose-egged. Then the week before that, they got beat 37-0. They haven't scored a point in a football game since October 4th. And they scored 10 then. Their best offensive output this year was 42, and that was against Middle Tennessee State. But against Power 4 competition, 14 points, 10 points, 10 points, 0 points, 0 points. Yikes. And, oh, by the way, they're a 31.5-point dog on the road in Eugene this Saturday. Tough times in Wisconsin. Very tough times. My Wisconsin folk that listen, there's like 3 or 4 of y'all. Hey, I got y'all. I got y'all's back. Luke Fickell's got to go. So, another talking point I'd like to talk about real quick. Just give me a few minutes, and then we'll go into the predictions for this weekend's football games. I'd like to talk about a talking point that has come up a lot over the last few weeks, and it is ESPN biased towards the SEC? Because we've seen some people online say, oh, well, here we go. Surprise, surprise. ESPN's College Game Day is on another SEC campus this weekend. We've seen it all year. So let's talk about a few things. And, we can talk about the fact that the ranked on ranked matchups here as of late, Georgia and Ole Miss, top 10 matchup last weekend. Game Day's there. Look at the matchups they've been to. It's been consistently the best matchup of the weekend. Just so happens to be in the Southeastern Conference. And I'm sorry that College Game Day doesn't want to go watch Ohio State beat the brakes off Northwestern. But it's just not that's not where they want to go. I mean, this is the kind of things that people choose to get themselves worked up about, is the fact that Game Day's not going. And now, yes, I'm fully aware of the deal that the SEC and ESPN have. Does that play a factor into what's going on here? Potentially. I mean, there's a lot of money at play here when it comes to that. But, I mean, come on. Think about it for a second. The ranked-on-ranked matchups you have this weekend. You have Ole Miss, Oklahoma. It's an SEC matchup. You have Missouri, Vanderbilt. That's an SEC matchup. You have Texas A&M, LSU, SEC matchup. The 3 ranked-on-ranked games that we have this weekend coming up are all SEC on SEC football games. So where do you propose that College Game Day goes? If you're one of these people that's whining and moaning about it. Do you propose they go to East Lansing to watch Michigan take on a 3-4 Michigan State squad? Oh, you know what? No, I know. How about going to Louisville, Kentucky and watching a 1-6 Boston College team who's a 25.5 point dog to Louisville? How about let's go to that one? Or wait a minute. Nope. Even better. We could go to Coral Gables and go watch Miami and Stanford, where Miami's a 29.5 point favorite against a 3-4 Stanford squad. Or we could go watch Oklahoma State play Texas Tech. Texas Tech favored by 38.5. Oh, Jesus Christ. I just read that line for the first time. Wow. But a 1-6 Oklahoma State squad going to Texas Tech. Where do you propose they go? I mean, seriously, I'm all ears. Like, suggestions, please. You know, I'm one that I firmly stand on the fact that if you want to complain, you want to whine, and you want to moan about stuff, give a solution. By all means, give a solution. Where should College Game Day go as opposed to where they're going? I'll wait. All right, let's get a sip of water. We done got worked up a little bit. Let's get a sip of water real quick, and we'll move into the predictions. Okay. All right. Prediction time. Moving on in, we got Ole Miss going to Norman, Oklahoma. Ole Miss coming off the loss last week to Georgia in Athens. Bounce back spot here for Lane Kiffin and the squad. Trinidad Chambliss, who I had a lot of praise for, especially after last Saturday's game. But going into Norman, tough environment, back-to-back weeks, tough environment. And let's talk about the fact that Ole Miss's defense was on the field for 80 plays, I think it was. Maybe over 80 plays last weekend against Georgia. They were on the field a lot. That defense was definitely tired. And they're outside of the top 100 in the country in rush defense. Oklahoma seemed to, last weekend against South Carolina, somewhat find their stride in the run game. That's been an issue that I've been kind of circling all year for Oklahoma. And I said earlier in the year, man, that defense that they have is legit, but they're too one-dimensional on offense, and they go as Mateer goes. And if Mateer gets hurt or if Mateer has a bad game, Oklahoma's going to lose. Oklahoma had a bad game against Texas. What happened? They lost. So the last week was a very good, a very good indication that this team has got things somewhat moving in the right direction as it pertains to running the football. When you watch them against South Carolina, they looked really good, winning 26-7. But, Blaylock running for 101 yards on 19 carries. 5 yards a carry, that's really good in the SEC. And John Mateer didn't have to throw the ball all over the yard. Finished the day with 150 yards passing. Easing him back in, not trying to ask him to do too much was probably the best game plan for that South Carolina game. But Oklahoma ultimately finishes with 171 rush yards. They allow 54 to Carolina last week. It's kind of a similar recipe here for Oklahoma in this game. I think you're going to see an Oklahoma. I think you're going to see a very old school looking Oklahoma football team this Saturday. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see an Oklahoma team very heavy on the run, very heavy on the defensive side, stopping the run. Because, that to me is the recipe to beat this Ole Miss team. And, you see a lot of people throwing around Ole Miss going to win this football game. I I don't know. It's kind of it's a weird thing to me. Oklahoma cannot turn the ball over. That's a big key for me. Oklahoma can't turn the ball over, but likewise, Ole Miss doesn't need to turn the ball over because Ole Miss can't stop anybody. Like this is a game to me. It's like a coordinator. It's a coordinator matchup for me. It's a Pete Golding, defensive coordinator for Ole Miss, versus Ben Arbuckle, offensive coordinator for Oklahoma. That's the key matchup to me. Ben Arbuckle versus Pete Golding. That's where the game's going to be won and lost, is between those two guys. What they call getting in the right formations, taking advantage of what the defense gives him if he's Ben Arbuckle, trying to take advantage of Pete Golding's defense, which has been atrocious, by the way. And that's going to be the matchup within the matchup. The players are on the field. The players are doing, the players are running the plays, but the guys calling the plays is where the real matchup is going to be happening. And I'm excited to watch it. Ultimately, though, I think the fact that we saw an Oklahoma team that was able to run the football as well as they were last week, I think the game plan remains somewhat the same against Ole Miss. Run the football, keep that explosive offense, keep Trinidad Chambliss off the field. Kewen Lacey, keep him off the field. Keep Harrison Wallace off the field. Keep Stribling off the field. You got to keep those guys for Ole Miss off the field. They're too explosive. You can't 3-and-outs are your worst or your biggest enemy if you're Oklahoma. No 3-and-outs. Got to sustain drives. Got to drive down the field, run the football, finish drives off with touchdowns. Oklahoma's defense, though, this is one of those games where I think, whose defense do I trust better? Oklahoma's. And so I'm going to lean Oklahoma here. I'm going to go Oklahoma. Oklahoma currently favored by 4.5. I like Oklahoma to win, and I like Oklahoma to cover in this football game. A little under-the-radar Group of 5 game for you here. Moving on. USF at Memphis. And I know some of y'all don't pay attention to Group of 5. That's fine. I didn't say you had to. But a little bit of an under-the-radar game. Going to talk about it for just a brief second. Alex Golesh, head coach USF, going on and playing Ryan Silverfield, coach at Memphis. Yes, that same Memphis that beat Arkansas this year. Two guys that are going to be hot commodities in the coaching carousel. People like Alex Golesh, people like Silverfield, Ryan Silverfield out of Memphis. These are two guys that are probably going to be sought after in the coaching market. And this is their chance. More of a, not a prime time, chance, I guess, here, but you have the opportunity to show, what you're made of as a coach, USF, and it's also a very important test for these two teams because these are two of the favorites to make that Group of 5 spot in the college football playoff. And so it's very tight. I mean, you've got currently USF favored by 3.5 on the sports book. And then you have the FPI analytics at ESPN gives Memphis a 50.1% chance to win, and it gives USF a 49.9% chance to win. So as close to a coin flip as you can get, 0.1% from a coin flip, 50-50. And that's what this game is. I think this is more of a pick'em game. South Florida being favored on the road is kind of crazy to me. Being favored on the road going to Memphis. But a noon kick, it's a game that I will definitely be tuning into on Saturday at noon. USF favored by 4.5. I like Alex Golesh. I like Ryan Silverfield. I like what they do. So in this case, give me Memphis. And I like USF to cover, though. I like it to be a tight football game. I like for Memphis to end up winning this one somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30-28, 30-27, something like that's where my head's kind of at on that one. But an interesting Group of 5 game if you're willing to watch it. I think it'll be a very good football game. Auburn going to Arkansas. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because this is bad on bad. This is going to be like my game. If there is a game of the week, this is my not game of the week, so to speak. This is a cover your eyes, stinky poo-poo. Like, this is going to be I don't think this is going to be a very interesting game because both of these teams have kind of mailed it in on the season already. Auburn's still pouting about referees' calls that have happened 2-3 weeks ago. Arkansas is without a head coach. They got Bobby Petrino there, so they're kind of revitalized, but they can't stop anybody. So I feel like this is one of those games that's going to be kind of weird because I feel like it might be an interesting game to watch, but then at the same time, I might feel like it might be bored. It might be boring to watch. I don't know which one it's going to be until you actually put your eyes on it and watch it. But I can tell you the product on the field by way of the Auburn offense is going to be terrible. And the product on the field with Arkansas's defense is going to be terrible. So maybe it's a matchup made in heaven. Who knows? Like you got bad on bad Auburn offense on Arkansas defense. And then you got kind of good on good. Arkansas's offense is pretty good, and then Auburn's defense is pretty good. So it's going to be an interesting matchup regardless. Currently, this one is, and I'm trying to find the spread on this one because this is not a ranked matchup, so a little bit harder to find on this one. Arkansas currently favored by 2.5, probably a little bit more of a probably indicative of them being at home is giving them the favorite on the point. I think this is more or less a pick'em game. I think that, you know what? I really do like the way that Arkansas has been playing over the last few weeks, and I like the fact that how tough they played A&M. It's a weird team to play right now. Like there's a lot of teams in the SEC that are probably not, would not look forward to going to Fayetteville and playing this Arkansas team. I'm going to consider Auburn being one of those, and I'm going to take Arkansas in this one, and I'm going to take them to cover. I mean, they're favored by 2.5, so I'm going to take them to cover. Give me the Hogs. Give me Bobby Petrino, the Hogs, Taylor Green, those guys, very talented roster. Ultimately, Sam Pittman couldn't do anything with it. But, when you got guys like Mike Washington running the rock, you got Taylor Green, then you got guy down the field like Omega Blake catching the football. I mean, who knows? Crazy things can happen. This explosive Arkansas offense might just take the lid off of this Auburn defense and, never know. But give me Arkansas in that one and give me Arkansas to cover. So, weird spot here as we move on. And let me get another sip of water because I've been battling dry throat all day. So, let me get another sip of water and we'll move into the latter half of the predictions here. So, a weird spot here for Alabama. Going to Columbia. Still October, still Cocktober. As the South Carolina fans want to call it. But Cocktober's been canceled. South Carolina's terrible. They're not a good football team. We were expecting a lot more. We've talked about that multiple times on the show so far this year, that this is one of the most underwhelming and most unimpressive teams, disappointing teams of this season is the South Carolina Gamecocks. But the issue here with me is Alabama was in a very similar spot last year. And this is something that I happen to just kind of be thinking about, just today on my commute back from work. I just happened to think about it, and I was like, you know what? That's right. Because last year, they got a big win against Georgia. Turn around, what happens, a week later? They lose to Vanderbilt as a heavy favorite on the road. Flip it around, Bama's had one of the most impressive runs over the last month that we have seen in college football in quite some time, maybe ever. Impressive run. 4 straight ranked teams just mowed them down like a cornfield. And now, all the emotion of winning those 4 games, now you go on the road to South Carolina. Very weird place to play. You go on the road to South Carolina. You're a 12.5-point favorite, which I think potentially you can make the argument that it should be more, but I think Vegas might be reading into the thing that I'm telling you about. Is this same Bama team is the same Bama team that last year sleptwalked into Nashville and got beat by a Vanderbilt squad that they were favored to beat by, I think it was 20 points. Similar situation here, similar scenario. But I think that Bama is just different this year. I think Ty Simpson is a better quarterback than Jalen Milroe. I think Jalen Milroe brought his own skill set to the table, but Ty Simpson is a better quarterback all around. And I like Alabama to win in this spot. But here's the kicker. I do not like them to cover. I think South Carolina gives Alabama a little bit of a scare on Saturday. I really do. I think this game might be tight at halftime. I think South Carolina is going to play with a lot of emotion, a lot of heart. They're going to be really desperate to get Shane Beamer a win. I think they're going to come out and play with a lot of emotion. I think they're going to play Bama really, really competitively, maybe until the latter half of the third quarter, and then we're going to see Bama establish and start to dominate this football game. And I think Alabama wins this one, but I do not have them covering. I have them winning this one by a touchdown. And I think could be eating crow on that one. I just have a weird gut feeling about it that, it could potentially happen. So next game. College game day, going to be in Nashville. Never thought I would say that. Never thought I would say that. College game day going to Vanderbilt. They're going to be in Nashville for Mizzou at Vanderbilt. A ranked-on-ranked matchup. Vanderbilt ranked in the top 10 for the first time since 1941. So some of y'all that listen to me, your grandparents probably wasn't even born then. I don't know. Crazy, right? Vanderbilt ranked for the first time, ranked in the top 10 for the first time since 1941. Now they got game day on campus. Like, what is happening? Like, really? I'm like in a alternate, like I'm in a Twilight Zone or something. Like, that's the only way I can explain this. But either way, this Vanderbilt team now, like I've said multiple times on the show, this is not your Papaw's Vanderbilt team. This is not the Vanderbilt team from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that as a young Georgia fan that I used to grow up and watch. And when I saw Vanderbilt on the schedule, I was like, whatever. That's how Vanderbilt was. Vanderbilt was the doormat of the SEC for years. They were the Commodore mat, if you will. That was kind of lame. But either way, now they aren't the doormat anymore. Now they are kind of more or less the aggressor we've seen this year at times. Like I said, Twilight Zone, alternate universe, just digits just floating around in the air above my head right now, trying to figure out the equation to why this is happening. But the thing is, I admire Clark Lee as a coach. I also think Diego Pavia is a very talented quarterback. I think he's a creator. And I think that's what makes this team so good, is the fact that he is able to get out and he's able to create and manipulate a defense. But this is going to be my game of the week. I put a little bit of thought into this. I was like, which game is going to be my game of the week? This Mizzou at Vanderbilt is the after the whistle game of the week. And if you know the rules on that, last week we covered it. This week I will put out a post with this graphic, with the Mizzou at Vanderbilt graphic on it. You will guess the score prediction. You will make a score prediction. If your score prediction is right, you will get a gift card to the place of your choosing, whether that be Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, Bass Pro, O'Reilly Auto Parts, the movie theater, I don't care. Wherever, Fanatics, wherever, I don't care. But now the gift card amount is $25. So every week that nobody guesses the score, we will roll in $5 to the gift card amount. So it's $25 this week. If nobody gets it, it'll be $30 next week, $35 the week after that, $40, so on and so forth until somebody guesses the score prediction. And yes, it does have to be exact. I've been asked that multiple times. The rules are that it has to be the exact prediction. So moving on to this one, though, or staying in Missouri Vanderbilt. Interesting contest here, because you've got two teams that both 6-1, both same record in the conference. Very big SEC matchup, because a couple weeks ago, before the Bama game, people were talking about this Mizzou squad being a potential contender for Atlanta, with Ahmad Hardy, with that rushing attack, with a defense that was top 10 in quarterback pressures, with the top 10 in sacks, tackles for loss, you name it. That was Missouri. We heard about all that. Now, the loss to Bama cannot mean the end of Mizzou's season. So we find out now they move into another ranked-on-ranked matchup. How do they handle the spotlight again against Vanderbilt? How does it work out for them? I like Drink as a coach. I like Clark Lee as a coach. Coaching to me, who has the coaching advantage? Kind of a toss-up. Kind of a toss-up for me. Likewise, quarterback advantage, I'd probably have to lean Pavia on this one. If I'm going for Missouri and Vanderbilt, I'd probably lean Diego Pavia on this one over Perbula, just because of Pavia's ability to run the football. But here's one thing that I've always said is it could be a red flag, potentially could be a red flag. If your leading rusher is a quarterback, to me that's a red flag. It's always a red flag. Likewise, that's the offense that Clark Lee chooses to run. And a lot of Diego Pavia's rushing yards are scrambles. They're not designed, quarterback runs. They're more or less scrambles, getting out of the pocket, creating. But to me, it's always a red flag when, the leading rusher is a quarterback. But either way, does that really affect Vanderbilt in this spot? I don't think so, because I think Vanderbilt's just going to come in. They're going to play their game. But, you got guys like Eli Stowers, really good tight end. And then on the defensive side of things, for Vanderbilt, you've got NFL guys on this roster. This is, like I said, this isn't the old school Notre Dame. You've got guys like Miles Capers. You've got a guy like C.J. Hurd. You've got some really good pro potential players on this roster. I just named a few of them. Do I think Pavia is a pro option? We'll see. But Stowers surely is. Capers surely is. Hurd surely is. This is a really good football team. This is not the same old Vanderbilt that they've been over the years and historically. FPI gives Vanderbilt a 55% chance to win at home. Mizzou coming to town. Missouri, I think, is going to try to come in and shorten this football game. I think the goal here for Missouri is going to try to keep Vanderbilt's offense off the field. And when we look at what other teams have been able to do against Vanderbilt by way of rushing the football, LSU, who's got a atrocious rushing attack, they hit the 100-yard mark on 21 carries. Alabama, who's got a lot better offensive line, better running back, ran for 146 on 38 carries against this Vanderbilt defense. And then when you go back and look at teams like, South Carolina obviously didn't run the ball really good. Virginia Tech didn't. But this Vanderbilt team is going to be tested because Missouri's game plan is going to be to run Ahmad Hardy and try to shorten this game, keep the football out of Diego Pavia's hands as much as they possibly can, because that's really the secret sauce. It's what you have to do. The best defense is an offense that can shoot clock and keep the other offense off the field. So I really don't know. After watching Mizzou, I'm just really not prepared to believe in them. The Bama loss, it was a close loss. So I'm like, okay, well, Bama's just good. Bama's a good team. Missouri almost had them. But then they turn around a week later, and it takes double overtime to get by a struggling Auburn squad. So this is crazy, and I can't believe I would ever say this, but it is 2025. Like I said, it's a crazy world that we live in. Give me Vanderbilt over Missouri, and give me Vanderbilt to cover, which it's only a 2.5-point spread. Vanderbilt's way. Give me Vanderbilt to cover there in Nashville in After the Whistle's Game of the Week. Texas A&M go into Death Valley at night. Upset meter on level 7.5 for this one. And after all the crap that I talk about Brian Kelly, we can allude to this and we can say, hey, This is still an LSU team that's got the talent, and this is still Death Valley at night. You know, the LSU faithful are going to be singing Neck at the top of their lungs. And if you have never heard the lyrics to that, do not expect me to sing it on my podcast, because we are family friendly. We are child friendly. We are safe for work, so to speak. So I'm not going to repeat the chant. You can Google it if you want, but you've been warned. Not exactly appropriate, but it's still Death Valley at night. Still a tough spot, tough place to play. So how does Mike Elko, how does Marcel Reed, how does this Texas A&M football team handle the environment? They've handled the environments pretty well that they've played in, but here's the kicker with Texas A&M, and everybody wants to talk about Texas A&M being the best team in the SEC, but here's the issue that I have with making that statement right now is look at who they've played in conference. Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State, Auburn. The bottom feeders of the SEC this year. Absolute bottom dwellers. So it took you a point to get by Notre Dame, and then you gave up 22 to a group of five, or not a group of five, but you gave up 22 points to an FCS opponent, 24 points to an FCS opponent. So Texas A&M, just the jury's kind of out on them. I think they're a good team. I think they're talented. We're not trying to twist words here, right? But I think Mario Craver's great. I think Ruben Owens is great. I think Marcel Reed's good. KC Concepcion's good. Cassius Howell on that defensive front, incredible player. Texas A&M hiring Mike Elko was a big deal. It was a great move for them. He's established a culture of toughness in this football team. They're physically tough. They're mentally tough. Dangerous with the talent that they have, and you compare and you put the two together, and you get what you have there in College Station. However, they haven't really been tested much this year. LSU's going to be a team, one, it's going to be a crazy environment. Two, this LSU team is still talented. We can't forget that. This is still a very talented football team, talented roster. Nussmeier, Aaron Anderson, Kay Durham. You know, even though Harold Perkins Jr. has been absolute non-existent, you know, this year. I mean, we were expecting a big year from him, but nothing. So, but this LSU defense is still formidable. I wouldn't say they're top tier, but they're still formidable. They're serviceable. It's a good defense. A&M's going to be tested. Likewise, LSU's going to be tested because you have the ability of Marcel Reed and his dual threat ability to, you know, throw the ball. Likewise, he's a very good athlete. He can run it. When you got a guy like Ruben Owens running the football, and you got guys like Craver and Concepcion down the field that can really stretch you, it's going to really put a lot of stress on this defense. And I think that's the key to the game. That's the key matchup, is this A&M offense versus this LSU defense. Can LSU limit the big play? Because A&M's explosive. Can LSU force A&M to keep things in front of them, to sustain drives? You got to win first down. You got to get them in third and passing situations. You got to pin your ears back, and you got to get after Reed. And those are the big, key points for LSU in this spot. And Garrett Nussmeier, man, you've got to have a good game. At some point, you got to have a good game. I mean, it has been absolutely pathetic watching Garrett Nussmeier this year so far. I mean, a guy that we were expecting to take a giant leap forward after last year. We saw the talent there. We saw the growth. And then it's just like he was better last year than he is this year. He just kind of down the hill, just rolled down the hill. The hill that he climbed in the first year as a starter, essentially, he's back down. Very hard to explain that. But the talent's there to win this football game. The environment's going to be there. It's going to be crazy. It's at night. Death Valley's going to be rocking. I still think A&M wins this football game, though. I still think that A&M wins it. I think it's tight. I think it comes down to the wire, and I honestly think this game could go either way. It just really depends on what LSU team shows up defensively, but I like A&M in this spot. I like this game to be somewhat low scoring. I think it's going to be tough sledding for both teams. I think you're going to see a final score along the lines of 16-13, 17-13, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think it's going to be a very tight defensive slugfest style football game. Just good old-fashioned rock fight, if you will. Not a lot of offense played in it whatsoever. Two more games we got to go over really quick. We got BYU traveling on the road going to Iowa State. A game with a lot of Big 12 implications here on the line. You know, BYU coming off the big win in the Holy War against Utah, going on the road to play Matt Campbell's squad, Iowa State. So here's the thing here. 5-2 Iowa State, 7-0 BYU. The question mark that I've been asking myself is this BYU team, you know, as good as we think they are, or as good as a lot of people think they are? I really think that they haven't quite reached their full potential yet, but this is going to be a really interesting matchup. You got an interesting quarterback matchup between Bear Bachmeier and Rocco Becht. So to me, it's going to be very interesting to see, because I feel like that's the matchup within the matchup in this football game is going to be the quarterback duel. Bear Bachmeier, true freshman, just been playing outstanding this year so far, versus the kind of savvy vet in Rocco Becht there for the Iowa State Cyclones. BYU currently in this spot is a 2.5-point underdog on the road. I really like this BYU football team. I like BYU to win this football game outright. Take them on the money line and ride with it. BYU's for real. Bear Bachmeier's for real. And, really good football team there in Provo, Utah. So the last one we want to go over is going to be Illinois going up against Washington. Big Ten game. Illinois is one of those teams that I feel like controls their own destiny in the college football playoff. And we talk about how many teams the SEC is going to get from the playoff, or get into the playoff, how many teams the Big Ten is going to get into the playoff. I think you got to include Illinois in that discussion as long as they get by Washington, because if they get by Washington, listen to the final four of their schedule. They've got Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Northwestern. So 4 very winnable games for Brett Bielema, Luke Altmaier, and this squad. Get past Washington. I'm not saying it's smooth sailing, but you get past Washington, and you don't have really anybody that can do any damage to you, unless you just absolutely lay an egg and, you screw around and lose to somebody you shouldn't. Other than that, you should be fine. So when we talk about Big Ten teams that are kind of dark horse teams that could sneak their way into the playoff, Illinois has got to be one of them, because they do have a path as long as they get by Washington. Washington currently favored in this spot by 4.5 points. And what I want to see from Washington in this football game, after the 17-point loss to Michigan last week, after the fact that you had a team who has ran the ball quite, effectively. It's been a serviceable run game for the most part of the year. Had 23 carries for 40 yards last week against Michigan. I need to see better results from Jonah Coleman in this run game in this spot against Illinois. If you want to win this football game, that's what has to happen. Is you just have to run the football. So Jeff Fish, got to run the football with Jonah Coleman. Likewise, Denzel Boston, got to get him the football. You've got the players, you've got the athletes to make it happen. Damon Williams, Very good athlete at quarterback in his own right. So this is a team that can make some waves in that conference, but we haven't quite seen it yet this year. Now, very good matchup here with Illinois. It's tough for me to pick this game because I've thought about it. I mean, I wrote down, I had like a pros and a cons list of both teams. Like, what does this team do good and this team doesn't do good? And one thing that just stuck out to me, I guess, when I look at these two football teams is I go back and I look and I say, well, let's see how. And I'm not saying that Ohio State runs the football as good as Washington, but what I will say is we can always look at stats. How did Ohio State run the football? 106 yards. You know, likewise, when we look at even if it's not Ohio State, let's look at a team like USC and let's say, how did USC run the football against Illinois? They had 126 yards. So the fact that Illinois is allowing consistent 100-yard rushers, and we don't even want to look at the stats from the Indiana game because yikes. Like Indiana with 312 yards on the ground. They got gashed by Indiana. Jonah Coleman is a very good running back there at Washington. I think that Washington is going to feed him the football. Jeff Fish is going to feed him the football on Saturday. And I like Washington in this spot to get a big win over the Illinois Fighting Illini. And currently Washington a 4.5-point favorite. I like Washington to win. I don't like Washington to cover. I think it's a tight game. I think Washington wins by a field goal. So that might be the most shocking pick that I've made out of the prediction show. Everything else is just kind of what you would expect, but, you know, either way, have some very good games lined up for this weekend. Got a couple ranked on ranked matchups. Game days in Nashville. Crazy times, I know. But I hope you enjoy your football this weekend. You know, watch it with your friends. Watch it with your family. It's a lot more enjoyable when you do that. Grill something. Drink you some cold beverages. And as always, I will catch y'all on Monday recapping all of the weekend's action. Until then, y'all be safe, and I will catch y'all next time.